I'm 32 and I judge birds for a living. Yeah, you heard that right. While most people my age are climbing corporate ladders, I'm watching pigeons race across Michigan's skies and timing their flights down to the millisecond. The sound of wings cutting through air is my symphony. The sight of perfect form in flight my addiction. That Saturday morning at the Grand Rapids flea market changed everything. I wasn't looking for love, wasn't even looking for company. I was hunting for vintage bird call whistles to add to my collection when I spotted it. Brass, tarnished with age, sitting between a broken radio and someone's grandmother's china. The vendor wanted $20, but I could tell by the maker's mark this piece was worth 10 times that. Beautiful whistle. The voice came from behind me, smooth and educated. I turned to find a woman about my height, maybe a few years younger, with rich brown hair catching the morning light and the most stunning green eyes I'd ever seen. She wore jeans and a field jacket, the kind researchers favor, and her hands. Damn, those hands were elegant, long fingers that looked like they belonged holding delicate instruments. You know about bird calls? I asked, still clutching the whistle. More than I should. I'm Jacqueline Taylor. I study rare bird migration patterns at the university. Rachel Campbell. I judge racing pigeons. Her eyebrows lifted. No kidding. I've been wanting to observe racing behavior for my research. The speed variations during different weather patterns could support my theories about natural migration instincts. I found myself studying her face as she spoke, the way her eyes lit up when discussing her work. There was passion there, real dedication. Plus, she understood why that whistle mattered. Listen, she continued. I can tell you want that piece. But would you consider letting me document its sound patterns first? Some of these older calls produced frequencies we've lost in modern manufacturing. Smart move. Instead of competing, she was proposing collaboration. How about this? I said, pulling out my phone. I'll buy it, you can study it, but first you let me show you what real racing birds can do. There's a competition next weekend. Deal. She smiled, and something in my chest did this weird flutter thing. We exchanged numbers right there between the antique dealers and produce stands. As I watched her walk away, field jacket swaying with each step, I realized I'd just done something completely unlike me. I'd invited a stranger into my world. The whistle felt warm in my palm, like it approved of the transaction. Maybe it knew something I didn't yet. Maybe it understood that some discoveries are worth more than their weight in brass. That night, I found myself staring at her contact information, wondering if Tuesday was too soon to text about weekend plans. The flutter in my chest had settled into something steadier, something that felt suspiciously like anticipation. Tuesday came and went. Wednesday too. By Thursday, I was second-guessing myself. Maybe she wasn't actually interested in the competition. Maybe our encounter was just polite conversation between bird enthusiasts. Then my phone buzzed Friday evening. Still on for tomorrow. And would you mind if I brought recording equipment? I stared at the text longer than necessary, that flutter returning with vengeance. She'd been thinking about it too. Saturday dawned clear and crisp, perfect racing weather. The regional competition drew participants from across the state, their prized birds cooing softly in transport crates. I arrived early to set up timing equipment and review flight patterns with other judges. Professional mode, focused and efficient. Then I saw her walking across the field, camera bag slung over one shoulder, recording device in hand. She wore the same field jacket but had traded jeans for khaki pants that hugged her curves perfectly. My concentration wavered. Morning, Rachel. This setup is incredible. Wait until you see them fly. I guided her through the process, explaining release protocols and timing systems. She asked intelligent questions, took detailed notes. When the birds launched, she stood close enough that I caught her perfume, something subtle with hints of cedar. How do you track them individually? She whispered, as hundreds of pigeons circled overhead. Experience. Each bird has unique flight characteristics. Watch that one. I pointed to a dark-winged racer pulling ahead of the pack. See how she takes wider turns but maintains speed? That's determination, not just training. Jacqueline's recording device captured everything. Her excitement was infectious, professional fascination mixed with genuine awe. Between timing runs, we discussed migration theory, reading programs, weather impact on performance. Her research dovetailed perfectly with my practical knowledge. Your birds choose efficiency over instinct, she observed during lunch break. Wild birds follow ancient patterns, but racers optimize for speed. Both have their purpose. Survival versus achievement. Which do you prefer? The question caught me off guard. Both, I guess. Depends on what you're trying to accomplish. She smiled at that, and I realized we weren't just talking about birds anymore. The day stretched longer than usual. Instead of wrapping up after the final race, Jacqueline lingered, helping me pack equipment and asking about training methods. Other judges had gone home, leaving us essentially alone on the empty field. "Thank you for today," she said as we loaded the last timing device into my truck. "This data will revolutionize my migration study." "Happy to help. Maybe we could discuss it further sometime." "Over dinner?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Professional collaboration was safe territory. Dinner invitations crossed different lines entirely. "I'd like that," she said softly. "But I should mention something first." My stomach dropped. Here came the polite rejection, the explanation about boyfriends or complications. "I don't date much. My work keeps me pretty isolated." Relief flooded through me. Mine too. Hazard of specialized professions. She stepped closer, close enough that I could see gold flecks in those green eyes. "Rachel, I'm not looking for anything casual." "Neither am I." The moment stretched between us, charged with possibility. Then her phone buzzed with a text, breaking the spell. "Rain forecast for next week," she said, glancing at the screen. "Terrible for racing, perfect for research. Maybe you'd like to see my home setup. I have monitoring equipment there." Another invitation, another risk. But something about Jacqueline made taking chances feel necessary. "Wednesday evening work for you?" "Perfect." As she drove away, I stood in the empty parking area wondering what the hell I was doing. Inviting a researcher to my house crossed every professional boundary I'd established. But watching her taillights disappear, I knew I'd do it again without hesitation. Wednesday couldn't come fast enough. Wednesday arrived with the promised rain. I spent the afternoon cleaning my cabin, telling myself it was just professional courtesy. But when I changed clothes for the third time, I admitted this felt like more than research collaboration. My place sits 20 minutes outside Grand Rapids, surrounded by oak trees and enough space for my birds to train properly. The main house is small but comfortable, with a converted barn that serves as my equipment storage and bird housing facility. Jacqueline arrived at 7, soaked from the sprint between her car and my front porch. Rain had darkened her brown hair almost black, and droplets clung to her jacket like tiny diamonds. "Sorry I'm late. GPS got confused by your driveway." "No problem. Come in, get warm." I handed her a towel and started coffee while she examined my setup. Recording equipment lined one wall, flight charts covered another. My prize racing birds cooed softly from their heated enclosure. "This is incredible, Rachel. You've essentially created a private research facility." 15 years of obsessive collecting tends to accumulate. She moved through the space like she belonged there, asking technical questions about my monitoring systems. Her enthusiasm matched my own, creating an energy that made the small cabin feel even smaller. "The storm's getting worse," she observed, glancing toward the windows where rain hammered against glass. "Spring storms hit fast here. Usually pass quickly though. But this one didn't pass." By 9 o'clock, wind was howling through the oak trees and lightning was turning the sky white every few seconds. The radio crackled warnings about flooding on rural roads. "I should probably head back," Jacqueline said, but her voice lacked conviction. "In this weather, the roads wash out during storms like this. You'd end up in a ditch." She bit her lower lip, considering options. That simple gesture did something to my resolve. "I have a guest room. It's not fancy, but it's dry. I don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. You're being smart." The power flickered twice, then died completely. Emergency lighting kicked in immediately, bathing everything in soft amber glow. "Well, that settles it," I said. "You're definitely staying." In the semi-darkness, with rain drumming overhead and amber light painting everything golden, the professional distance we'd maintained began dissolving. I found candles, opened wine. She curled up on my couch like she'd been doing it for years. "Tell me something," she said after we'd talked shop for an hour. "What made you choose bird racing? It's not exactly mainstream." "Started young. My grandfather raised pigeons, taught me about bloodlines and training. After he died, I inherited his birds. Kept learning, got certified as a judge. That's not the whole story." She was right. Birds don't lie, don't manipulate, don't disappoint. Their pure purpose, either they're fast or they're not. Either they come home or they don't. People have disappointed you. It wasn't a question. Somehow, in candlelight and storm sound, honesty felt safer than deflection. A few times. You? More than a few. That's why I study migration patterns. Animals follow instinct, people follow ego. We sat quietly, watching candle flames flicker. The storm raged outside, but inside felt warm, protected, safe. Rachel? Yeah? I'm glad the storm hit. Something in her voice made me look up. She was watching me with those green eyes, and the professional distance had vanished completely. Me too. The space between us on the couch seemed to shrink. When she leaned closer, I met her halfway. Our first kiss tasted like wine and possibility, soft and questioning. The second kiss answered every question I'd been afraid to ask. Is this okay? She whispered against my lips. Instead of answering with words, I pulled her closer. The storm outside forgotten, we discovered each other slowly, carefully. Her hands were as elegant as I'd imagined. Her skin warmed despite the cool air. When she whispered my name, it sounded like music. We made love on my couch with candles burning low and rain singing against the windows. Every touch felt like coming home. Every kiss like finding something I hadn't known I'd lost. She moved against me with surprising confidence. Her researcher's curiosity applied to mapping every response, every sigh. Afterward, we lay tangled together beneath an old quilt, listening to the storm begin to weaken. Her head rested on my shoulder, breath warm against my neck. The guest room offer still stands, I murmured. Or I could stay here. I was hoping you'd say that. Dawn came gray and quiet, the storm spent. But something had shifted irrevocably between us, something that felt bigger than weather patterns or research collaboration, something that felt like the beginning of everything. The morning after the storm, everything changed, not just between us but in how I saw the world. Jacqueline made coffee while I fed my birds, both of us moving around each other with the easy familiarity of longtime lovers, despite spending only one night together. I should probably go change clothes, she said, wearing my oversized university sweatshirt. It hung loose on her frame, revealing the curve of her collarbone. Keep it. The research team will start talking if you wear the same outfit 2 days running. She laughed. Let them talk. I'm 31, not 16. But we both knew academic environments thrived on gossip. Secret relationships were safer, at least initially. We agreed to be discreet, meeting away from campus and competition circuits where people knew us professionally. Our first official date happened 3 days later at a tiny cafe near the lake, far from anyone who might recognize either of us. She arrived wearing a green dress that matched her eyes perfectly, and I temporarily forgot how to form sentences. You clean up nice, Judge Campbell. You're not so bad yourself, Dr. Taylor. The conversation flowed easily. We talked about books, travel dreams, childhood memories. Normal things couples discuss while learning each other's patterns, but underneath ran an electrical current that made simple touches feel significant. I have a confession, she said over dessert. My stomach tightened. Here came the complicat ion, the reason this couldn't work. I looked up your competition record online. You're not just any judge. You're one of the top 3 in the region. Relief made me laugh. That's your big confession? It's intimidating. I study birds academically, but you understand them practically. Your knowledge goes deeper. Different types of knowledge. Your research helps explain what I observe empirically. We complement each other. She reached across the table, fingers brushing mine. Such a simple gesture, but it sent heat shooting up my arm. I like the sound of that. Complementing each other. 2 weeks later, she started leaving things at my place. A toothbrush first, then extra clothes, research papers scattered across my kitchen table. I found her presence addictive. Coming home to find her car in my driveway became the best part of every day. You realize what this means, she said one evening, unpacking groceries she'd bought for dinner. We stood in my kitchen, wine glasses in hand, the routine so domestic it should have scared me. Instead, it felt right. What does it mean? We're dating. Like seriously dating. Not just occasional meetings between professional colleagues. I set down my glass and stepped closer. Is that a problem? Only if you're not ready for it. Instead of answering with words, I kissed her. She tasted like the wine we'd been sharing, warm and slightly sweet. Her arms came around my neck, pulling me deeper into the kiss until we were pressed together from chest to hip. "Does that answer your question?" I whispered against her lips. "Partially. But I might need more convincing." The Bird Conservation Gala represented our first public appearance as a couple. Not officially, of course. We arrived separately, mingled separately, maintained professional distance. But anyone watching closely would have noticed the lingering looks, the way we gravitated toward each other throughout the evening. "You look stunning," I told her during a brief moment alone near the silent auction tables. Her black dress was elegant, without being flashy, and she'd pinned her hair up to reveal the graceful line of her neck. I wanted to kiss the spot just below her ear, but we were surrounded by colleagues. "Careful, Judge Campbell. People might notice you staring." "Let them notice." The words surprised us both. I wasn't ready for full disclosure, but I was tired of pretending she meant nothing to me. "Rachel." Her voice carried warning and longing in equal measure. "I know. Too public, too risky." But as the evening progressed, maintaining distance became increasingly difficult. When she laughed at something another researcher said, jealousy flared unexpectedly. When she touched the colleague's arm during conversation, I wanted to march over and claim her publicly. "You're being obvious," she murmured when we found ourselves alone again. "So are you. You've been watching me all night. Can you blame me? You look incredible in that suit." The compliment hit like physical contact. We stood close enough to touch but didn't dare, the tension between us electric. "This is torture," I said. "Worth it, though." Was it worth it? Standing there wanting to touch her but unable to, pretending she was just another colleague when she'd become the center of my world, I questioned our decision to keep things secret. But later, when we finally got back to my place and could stop pretending, when she helped me out of that suit with hands that shook slightly from suppressed desire, I knew the answer. Everything about her was worth it. 6 months. It felt like forever, and no time at all. Jacqueline had become woven into every part of my life. Her research papers sharing space with my racing schedules, her morning coffee ritual perfectly synchronized with mine. When she suggested a weekend getaway to celebrate our anniversary, I didn't hesitate. "Lake Michigan," I said, spreading maps across my kitchen table. "There's a place I know, quiet beach, perfect for birdwatching." "Sounds romantic." She traced the route with her finger. "How long since you've taken a real vacation?" Define real vacation. Time away from responsibilities, away from work, away from everything except us. The concept felt foreign. My birds required daily attention, competitions demanded preparation, equipment needed maintenance. But watching her face light up with anticipation, I realized how much I wanted this too. 2 days. I can arrange coverage for 2 days. Friday afternoon found us driving north, windows down, her playlist mixing folk music with classical pieces. She'd packed enough equipment to document every bird species in Michigan, but promised to limit actual research time. "This is supposed to be about us," she reminded me, hand resting on my thigh as I drove. "Everything's about us now." The cabin rental sat 50 yards from the water, surrounded by dunes and beach grass. No cell service, no internet, just waves and wind and endless sky. Perfect isolation. "It's beautiful, Rachel." She stood on the deck, hair whipping in the lake breeze, and I fell in love with her all over again. 6 months of watching her work, listening to her theories, discovering her habits, and she could still stop my breath with a simple smile. We spent Saturday hiking coastal trails, identifying migrating warblers and documenting flight patterns. Professional habits die hard, but our focus kept shifting to each other. She'd point out an unusual species. I'd step close to see. And suddenly we were kissing against a birch tree with scientific observation forgotten. "We're terrible researchers," she laughed after the third interrupted documentation session. "Speak for yourself. I'm observing something much more interesting than birds." "What's that?" "The way you bite your lip when you're thinking. The way you tilt your head when listening to unfamiliar calls. The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching." She blushed, a rare sight that made my chest tighten with affection. Evening brought wine and conversation on the deck, discussing everything except work. Her childhood in Ohio, my years figuring out what I wanted beyond birds, dreams we'd never shared with anyone else. "I want to travel," she said, stars reflecting in her eyes. Document migration patterns in South America. Study Arctic breeding grounds. Sounds amazing. And lonely. Not if I had company. Not if I had a partner who understood the work. The suggestion hung between us, loaded with possibility. 6 months ago, the idea of international travel would have terrified me. My birds, my competitions, my carefully structured life wouldn't survive extended absence. Now, watching her face in starlight, the idea felt less like disruption and more like adventure. "I love you," I said suddenly. The word surprised us both. We'd been circling the admission for weeks, but actually saying it felt momentous. "I love you too," she whispered. "So much, it scares me sometimes." We made love that night with a tenderness that felt different from our usual passion. Every touch carried weight, every kiss felt like a promise. She moved above me slowly, deliberately, green eyes never leaving mine. When she whispered my name against my shoulder, it sounded like prayer. Afterward, we lay tangled together, listening to waves against the shore. Her head rested on my chest, breath warm against my skin. "Rachel? Whatever happens, wherever life takes us, I want to face it together." I tightened my arms around her. "Promise?" "Promise." Sunday morning dawned perfect, clear sky stretching endlessly over calm water. We packed reluctantly, both knowing return to reality waited. The drive home felt too short, our sanctuary weekend compressed into memory. "Thank you," she said as we pulled into my driveway. "For the perfect getaway, for understanding what I needed. Thank you for reminding me life exists beyond work." We carried bags inside together, already planning our next escape. Future possibilities stretched ahead, rich with potential. International research trips, shared adventures, a life built around complementary dreams. Neither of us could predict how quickly everything would change. Later, when I replayed that weekend obsessively, I'd remember every detail with crystalline clarity. Her laugh echoing across the dunes, the way starlight caught in her hair, the absolute certainty in her voice when she promised we'd face everything together. I'd remember, and wonder if somehow we'd both known it was our last perfect moment. The highway stretched ahead like a promise. Sunday evening traffic was light, most people already home from weekend adventures. Jacqueline dozed in the passenger seat, her hand resting on my thigh, occasionally murmuring content sounds that made my heart skip. Perfect weekend, perfect woman, perfect life spreading out in front of us like that empty road. "Almost home," I said softly, not wanting to wake her but needing to share the moment. She stirred, smiling without opening her eyes. "Already?" Felt like we just left. Time flies when you're having the best weekend of your life. Only the best so far. We've got decades of weekends ahead. Decades. The word painted pictures in my mind. Growing old together, traveling to those research sites she'd mentioned, building something lasting and real. The radio played quietly, some jazz station she'd found during our drive north. Smooth saxophone filled the comfortable silence between us. Her breathing had steadied again, not quite asleep but deeply relaxed. That's when I saw the headlights. Wrong lane, wrong direction, coming fast. Time slowed the way it does in nightmares. Everything crystal clear and completely helpless. The other car weaving, overcorrecting, headlights swinging toward us like searchlights. Jackie. Her name came out sharp, urgent. She opened her eyes just as I yanked the steering wheel right, tires screaming against asphalt. The drunk driver clipped our rear quarter panel, sending us spinning off the highway into the drainage ditch. The world turned sideways, metal screaming, glass exploding. My last coherent thought before impact was protecting her, my body instinctively leaning toward her seat even as physics took control. Then nothing. Consciousness returned in fragments. Sterile smells, steady beeping, fluorescent lights that hurt my eyes. My mouth tasted like metal and regret. She's awake. A voice I didn't recognize. I tried to sit up, but restraints held me down. Panic flared immediately. "Easy, Miss Campbell. You're in Grand Rapids Memorial. You were in an accident." Accident. The word unlocked everything. Highway. Headlights. Jackie sleeping peacefully 1 second, terror the next. Where is she? Where's Jacqueline? The nurse, middle-aged with kind eyes, hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I didn't want to know. "She's in ICU. The doctor will explain everything. ICU. Intensive care. The words tasted like ash. Dr. Peterson arrived 20 minutes later, clipboard in hand and the expression doctors wear when news isn't good. He pulled up a chair, which somehow made everything worse. Miss Campbell, you've been unconscious for 18 hours. Mild concussion, 3 bruised ribs, various cuts and bruises. You're lucky. Lucky, right? Jacqueline Taylor. How is she? Critical but stable. She took the brunt of the impact. Traumatic brain injury, internal bleeding we've managed to control, broken ribs, fractured arm. Each injury hit like a physical blow. Can I see her? She's unconscious. Has been since the accident. He paused, choosing words carefully. There's something else. The brain trauma has caused significant swelling. We've reduced it surgically, but there may be complications. What kind of complications? Memory loss. We won't know the extent until she wakes up. Memory loss. The words echoed in my throbbing head. How much memory? Recent events? Years? Everything? When will she wake up? Could be hours, could be days. Brain injuries follow their own timeline. They wheeled me to her room 6 hours later, against medical advice but not against my threats to discharge myself. She lay unconscious, machines monitoring every vital sign. Bandages covered half her face, her arm elevated in traction. She looked so small in that hospital bed, surrounded by technology keeping her alive. This vibrant woman who'd filled my life with laughter and possibility, reduced to numbers on screens. I took her uninjured hand, careful not to disturb the IV lines. Her fingers felt cold, unresponsive. Hey beautiful, I whispered. Time to wake up. We've got decades of weekends to plan, remember? But she didn't remember. When Jacqueline finally opened her eyes 36 hours later, when the doctors performed their neurological tests and asked their careful questions, she remembered graduate school, her research position, her apartment. She didn't remember the flea market, didn't remember our first date or moving in together or the perfect weekend that ended in twisted metal and broken promises. She looked at me like a stranger when I tried to hold her hand, polite but confused, the way you'd treat someone claiming intimacy you couldn't recall. I'm sorry, she said, voice hoarse from intubation. They say we were together, but I just don't remember. I don't remember you at all. 6 months of building something beautiful, erased like pencil marks. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone wearing her face but missing her heart. The worst part wasn't losing her. The worst part was that she was still right there, close enough to touch but completely unreachable. My name is Rachel Campbell. We were dating for 6 months before the accident. The words sounded hollow even to me. 3 weeks had passed since she'd awakened, and every conversation felt like introducing myself to someone who should have known me better than anyone. Jacqueline sat propped against hospital pillows, looking stronger physically but still watching me with those polite, distant green eyes. The bandages were gone, revealing only faint scarring along her temple. Same face, same voice, completely different person. The nurses mentioned you visited every day, she said carefully. That's very kind, but you don't need to feel obligated. Obligated. The word cut deeper than surgical steel. I'm not here out of obligation. I'm here because I love you. But I don't remember loving you back. Honest, direct, devastating. The old Jacqueline would have found gentler words, but brain trauma apparently eliminated social filters along with memories. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to photos from our Lake Michigan weekend. Us hiking, laughing, wrapped in each other's arms against the sunset. Evidence of what we'd built. This was last month. You said it was the best weekend of your life. She studied the images with clinical detachment, like examining specimens under a microscope. We look happy, she admitted. But seeing photos doesn't make me remember feelings. It's like looking at strangers who happen to resemble us. Strangers. That's exactly what we were now. I knew her coffee preferences, her research theories, the sounds she made when I kissed her neck. She knew nothing about me except what doctors had explained. The memories might come back, I said, desperation creeping into my voice. Dr. Peterson said trauma victims sometimes recover lost time. And sometimes they don't. Rachel, I need you to understand something. Even if I never remember our relationship, that doesn't mean I can't build new feelings. But you're pushing so hard for me to be someone I can't access. New feelings. Start over. The suggestion should have offered hope, but instead felt like admitting defeat. The woman I loved wasn't lost, she was erased. This person wearing her face might develop affection for me eventually, but it wouldn't be the same love we'd shared. I tried anyway. Brought her favorite flowers, though she couldn't remember liking daisies. Played music from our weekend playlist, but the songs meant nothing to her now. Described our first meeting at the flea market, but the story sounded fictional even to my own ears. You're trying too hard, she said after 2 weeks of failed connection attempts. I can see how much this hurts you, watching me not remember. Maybe some space would help us both. Space. The last thing I wanted, the only thing that made sense. You're probably right, I lied. I'll give you room to recover without pressure. Her relief was visible, which hurt more than anger would have. I moved back to my cabin that afternoon, gathering belongings that smelled like her perfume from our shared apartment. Her research papers still covered the kitchen table, notes about migration patterns written in handwriting I'd once found endearing. Now it looked like evidence of someone else's life. The house felt enormous without her presence. My birds seemed confused by the change in routine. Even they had grown accustomed to her voice, her gentle handling during feeding time. Everything reminded me of what we'd lost. Nights were the worst. I'd reach for her sleeping form and find empty space. Wake up planning to share coffee and morning conversation. Then remember she'd forgotten we ever lived together. 3 weeks of self-imposed isolation before I saw her again, accidentally, at the university library. She was researching at a corner table, surrounded by journals and laptop screens. Professional mode, completely focused. She looked up as I passed, recognition flickering briefly. Rachel, how are you? Polite inquiry, nothing more. But for just a moment, something shifted in her expression. Confusion, like a word on the tip of her tongue. I'm fine. How's the recovery going? Better. I'm back to work part-time. The research helps keep my mind occupied. We stood in awkward silence. 2 people who'd once shared everything now struggling for conversation topics. I should let you work, I said finally. Actually, wait. This might sound strange, but I've been having dreams. Fragments, really. Sometimes I wake up feeling like I've forgotten something important. Hope flared dangerously in my chest. What kind of dreams? Birdsong, rain on windows, the smell of coffee mixed with something else, something comforting. They feel significant, but I can't make connections. Those were our memories, distorted by trauma but still present somewhere in her subconscious. Our first night together during the storm, morning routines in my kitchen, lazy weekend mornings. Dreams can be mysterious, I said, fighting to keep my voice neutral. She studied my face intently, like maybe my expression might unlock whatever her mind had hidden. Sometimes I think if I could just remember one clear moment, everything else might follow. Maybe it will. Or maybe I'm torturing myself trying to recover something that's gone forever. The honesty in her voice broke something inside me. She was struggling too, caught between a past she couldn't access and a present that felt incomplete. As I walked away, leaving her to her research, one thought echoed relentlessly. The woman I loved was still in there somewhere, locked behind walls of damaged memory. The question was whether those walls could be broken down, or if we were both condemned to live with ghosts of what used to be. 6 months after the accident, I'd learned to live with the constant ache. My competition schedules resumed. My birds required their routines. Life moved forward even when your heart stayed frozen in a twisted car on a dark highway. I didn't expect to see Jacqueline at the regional championships. Research season was in full swing. Migration patterns demanded documentation, and she'd shown no interest in racing events since losing her memories of us. But there she stood near the release area, camera bag over her shoulder, that familiar intensity in her green eyes as she tracked flight patterns. For a moment I forgot she didn't remember sharing this passion with me. Jacqueline. Her name came out rougher than intended. She turned, surprise flickering across her features. Rachel, I didn't know you'd be here. I'm judging the distance events. What brings you to a racing competition? Research project on homing behavior versus natural migration. The university approved funding last week. Of course. Work brought her here, not memories of watching races with me, not residual feelings she couldn't explain. Pure professional interest in phenomena she'd once shared with someone she couldn't remember loving. The setup's impressive, she continued, gesturing toward the timing equipment. More sophisticated than I expected. We take it seriously. Awkward silence stretched between us until the first release began. Hundreds of birds launched simultaneously, creating a living cloud against the autumn sky. Jacqueline raised her camera immediately, documenting flight formations with the same focused precision I remembered. Fascinating, she murmured, tracking individual birds through her lens. They're not following standard migration patterns at all. Professional enthusiasm replaced awkwardness. This was safer territory, shared expertise without emotional complications. Racing breeds for speed, not instinct, I explained. Their navigation systems are trained, not inherited. But some birds perform better than others at the same distance. What accounts for variation? We stood close enough to touch, discussing breeding programs and training methods. For 20 minutes, it felt almost normal, like colleagues sharing knowledge, minds connecting even when hearts couldn't. Then she lowered her camera, and I saw confusion in her expression. This feels familiar, she said quietly. Standing here, talking about birds with you. Not like a memory exactly, more like recognition. My pulse quickened. What kind of recognition? Have we done this before? Watched birds together? Discussed their behavior? The truth balanced on my tongue. I could explain our first meeting, our shared passion for ornithology, the weekend spent documenting species at Lake Michigan. But pushing had driven her away before. We've both been studying birds for years, I said carefully. Natural we'd have similar observations. She nodded, but kept watching my face like it might reveal secrets her damaged mind couldn't access. The final race began, elite birds competing over maximum distance. Jacqueline positioned herself near the finish line, camera ready to document arrival patterns. I focused on timing, professional instincts taking over, until she gasped. What is it? I asked, following her gaze skyward. That bird. The dark one pulling ahead. Watch how she turns. I focused on the racer she'd indicated, a prize-winning female with distinctive flight characteristics. She takes wider turns but maintains speed, Jacqueline whispered, almost to herself. That's not just training, that's determination. The exact words she'd spoken at our first competition together, when she'd been documenting racing behavior for her research. Words that had led to dinner invitations and falling in love and everything we'd lost. Did I just quote something? She asked, confusion deeper now. Those words felt significant somehow. You have good instincts about bird behavior. But she was studying me intently, recognition struggling behind those green eyes. Rachel, I need to ask you something, and I want complete honesty. My stomach clenched. Okay. Were we more than research colleagues? Before the accident, I mean. The way you look at me sometimes, the way you react when I say certain things. It feels like grief, not just professional disappointment. 6 months of careful distance crumbled. She deserved honesty, even if it drove her away permanently. Yes, I said simply. We were together. For 6 months, we were everything to each other. She absorbed this information silently, processing implications. How together? In love. Living together, planning a future. And I remember none of it. None of it. She turned away, watching the final birds cross the finish line. When she spoke again, her voice was barely audible. That explains the dreams, the fragments that feel important but make no sense. What dreams? Coffee in a kitchen that isn't mine, someone calling my name with affection I can't place. The sound of rain, feeling safe and warm despite storms outside. Every detail from our life together filtered through damaged memory. She was still in there, the woman who'd loved me, locked behind walls of trauma but fighting to surface. I have something that might help, I said suddenly. She looked up, hope and fear warring in her expression. The whistle, the one you wanted to study from the flea market. It's still at your apartment, in the box with your research equipment. What does a whistle have to do with anything? It's how we met. You wanted to document its sound patterns. You said some older calls produced frequencies we'd lost in modern manufacturing. Something shifted in her face, like puzzle pieces clicking into place. I remember saying that. Not to you specifically, but those exact words about vintage bird calls. Find the whistle, Jacqueline. Look at it, hold it, listen to its sound. Maybe it will help unlock what the accident took away. She nodded slowly, determination replacing confusion. Will you come with me? If we were truly together, if I loved you once, Maybe being around familiar objects with you present might trigger something stronger than dreams. Hope flared dangerously in my chest, but I was tired of protecting myself from disappointment. Yes, I'll come with you. As we walked toward the parking area, her hand brushed mine accidentally. She didn't pull away immediately, and for just a moment, I felt possibility again. Jacqueline's apartment felt like a museum of our relationship, preserved exactly as she'd left it before the accident. Research papers scattered across surfaces, my university sweatshirt draped over a chair, coffee mugs we'd shared that final morning still sitting in the sink. It's strange, she said, moving through rooms that should have felt familiar. I know this is my space, but everything feels arranged for two people. Because it was. You practically lived at my place, but kept this apartment for your research materials. She paused at the kitchen table where we'd spent countless evenings discussing migration patterns over dinner. Her fingers traced the surface absently. I can almost hear conversations that happened here. Fragments of discussion about bird behavior, but the other voice is unclear. That was me. We spent hours debating research methodology, comparing academic theory with practical observation. She moved to the bedroom, stopping at the dresser where personal items mixed together. My jewelry beside hers, a photo of us from the lake weekend face down on the surface. Why is this picture turned over? I picked it up, studying our laughing faces captured in sunset light. You flipped it after the accident. Said it hurt to see yourself looking so happy with someone you couldn't remember. She took the photo, examining our expressions with scientific curiosity. We looked completely comfortable together. Natural, like we'd been together for years instead of months. It felt that way to me too. Her bedroom held more evidence. My clothes mixed with hers in the closet, books on bird racing stacked beside her migration studies, the antique whistle sitting in its place of honor on the nightstand. She picked up the brass instrument carefully, turning it over in her hands. This is beautiful. Victorian era, I'd guess from the craftsmanship. Early 1900s, according to the maker's mark. You were fascinated by its tonal quality, said it produced frequencies modern calls couldn't match. I can hear myself saying that. She raised the whistle to her lips, producing a clear, haunting note that filled the small room. It's perfect for field research. The sound triggered something in her expression, a flicker of recognition followed by frustration. There's something about this whistle, about being in this room with you. Like word association where the connection stays just out of reach. Don't force it. Memories aren't logical, they're emotional. She set the whistle down and faced me fully for the first time since arriving. Rachel, I need to be honest about something. Since seeing you at the competition today, since realizing we were truly together, I've been feeling things I can't explain. My heart rate accelerated. What kind of things? Attraction, for one. Physical and intellectual. You're brilliant about bird behavior, passionate about your work. Under different circumstances, I could easily fall for someone like you. Someone like me, not me specifically. Progress, but painful progress. And emotional resonance, she continued. When you look at me with such obvious love, something responds even though my mind can't access why. Like my heart remembers even when my brain doesn't. She stepped closer. Close enough that I could smell her familiar perfume mixed with the detergent she used. Would it be completely insane to try starting over? Not recovering what we lost, but building something new from where we are now? The suggestion knocked the breath from my lungs. You mean dating? Actually dating? Not just trying to trigger lost memories? I mean acknowledging that maybe the heart knows things the mind has forgotten. Maybe love isn't just memory, maybe it's recognition. She reached up and touched my face gently, the first intentional contact since the accident. Her palm was warm against my cheek. I don't remember falling in love with you the first time. But I can feel myself beginning to fall in love with you right now. This time when she kissed me, it wasn't about recovering the past. Her lips were soft and questioning, seeking connection in the present moment. I kissed her back carefully, afraid sudden movement might break the spell. Is this okay? She whispered against my mouth. Are you sure? I don't want you feeling pressured because of what we used to have. I'm not kissing who we used to be. I'm kissing who you are right now, in this moment. We made love slowly, carefully, creating new memories instead of chasing old ones. She explored my body like discovering territory for the first time, which in many ways she was. Every touch felt precious. Every response a gift freely given, rather than obligation to forgotten feelings. Afterward, we lay tangled together in her bed, moonlight streaming through windows. She traced patterns on my bare shoulder, the gesture unconsciously familiar. "I may never remember our first time together," she said quietly, "but I'll remember this night for the rest of my life." "This is better than remembering," I replied. "This is choosing to love me again, knowing exactly what that choice means. Do you think we can make this work? Building new love on the foundation of old loss?" I pulled her closer, breathing in the scent of her hair. "I think we just did." 6 months later, she moved back into my cabin. Not because memory had returned, but because home was wherever we were together. She still couldn't remember our first meeting or original falling in love, but she'd created new reasons to stay. Sometimes, late at night when she thought I was sleeping, I'd hear her playing that antique whistle. Soft, haunting notes that seemed to carry all the love we'd lost and found again. Different, but deeper than before. The heart remembers what the mind forgets. And sometimes, starting over is the most perfect ending of all.